Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Just when I thought the world can't get any crazier and Trump can't get any more pompous, well, he decides to prove us wrong. There was a fundraising event yesterday, I think it was yesterday, and essentially Trump made some very interesting comments that have made the rounds all the way in Washington Post and now in the Kiev Independent, where we have an article from that we're going to look at in just a minute. Essentially, he said he would hit Beijing if China would invade Taiwan, and he would have hit, or he will hit, Moscow for invading Ukraine. Now, these are statements, first of all, that absolutely boggle my mind. I don't understand how people in power can be so irresponsible. We elect these people, right, to look after us, to represent our best interest, to actually do our bidding, and to look after our country. But then what do? They make statements like this, they start wars, they incite to wars, and they put themselves in between the conflict and the end of the conflict. Because of people like this, we do have ongoing wars, the forever wars. We've had Afghanistan, we've had Iraq, now we have this, and we've had Syria, Libya. I don't think it will ever end. I think no matter if you're Democrat or a Republican, I think these days it doesn't really make much of a difference at all. I think both parties have shaken hands behind the scenes, and then we are just here dumbfounded, looking at option A, option B, but actually it means all the same. Anyway, let's dive into the article, and we're going to talk some more about it. So, the Kiev Independent. Trump suggested he would have bombed Moscow for invading Ukraine, Washington Post reports. Former US President Donald Trump suggested at the fundraising event that he would have bombed Moscow in response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Washington Post reported on May 28th, citing several anonymous donors and advisors. So let's assume that's true. How can you make such statements? Remember when Henry Kissinger made that famous remark about Russia? That Russia's nothing but a gas station with nukes. Well, that didn't age very well, because today Russia's part of BRICS. It's, I think at the moment, BRICS represents 32.5 or 32.6% of the world GDP, surpassing the G7. Russia's it's a huge part of that. But anyway, that's what they thought at the time, or that's what they wanted us to think at the time. That's what they still want us to think to this day. In a piece detailing some of the claims and demands the former US president has made when on a fundraising drive for his current presidential bid, the paper also said he would attack Beijing if China invaded Taiwan on his watch. Well, first of all, I don't think China will invade Taiwan anytime soon because they have absolutely no reason to. Sure, there's the one China policy, and as long as Taiwan plays ball with China, then I think everything is going to be okay. I think the only problem in that region is the United States, who's trying to prevent the war by amping up the rhetoric and then inciting to a war. That's what we do, you see. We say, oh, we don't want that, but that, whatever it is, was never on the table. But because we keep talking about it, because we keep acting as if that's true, we're doing nothing but just bringing that event closer to actually being a reality. This is what we've done, this is what we keep doing, and this is what we will do in the future. According to Washington Post, Trump's comments surprised some of the donors. Well, of course they did. They surprised me. How can this not surprise you? When you elect your leaders to look after you, and then they say, well, we'll just nuke everybody, or we'll bomb everybody. And what do you think that will do? How do you think that's going to go down? Do you think China's just going to sit there and take it? Do you think they will not retaliate? Of course they will. And it's going to hit you hard. Trump has not publicly threatened to bomb Moscow, but in a phone call leaked in March 2022, Trump told a friend he had privately made such a threat to Russian President Vladimir Putin himself. Well, Trump says that. For some reason, I don't believe that to be true. And I'll say in a few words why I don't think that to be true. You see, Trump is the sort of person who makes pompous statements. So you can expect him to lie if he thinks that a grand statement will bring him some votes, some donors. He will make it. Make no mistake about it. He will say whatever he has to say. But on the other side, you have President Putin. And if you're familiar with him, he's not the type of person who you say these sort of things to. You know there will be consequences, you know there will be repercussions. I mean, if that actually happened, let's assume that actually happened, I think Putin's only reaction was he probably laughed, probably had a good laugh. I mean, how can you not? How can you take this seriously? Only somebody who's irresponsible to the brim can actually make these statements. According to the Washington Post, Trump also said he believes that both Moscow and Kiev want to save face, they want a way out, claiming that Ukrainians in Russian-occupied territories would not object to being part of Russia. So to this, I'll say a couple of things. One, I think partially he is true. What he says is true. I think both the Ukrainians and the Russians want a way out, as in I think they both want the war to end. I think it's going to be very difficult to realize. But nonetheless, and the second thing I want to highlight in that statement is the fact that he says that the Ukrainian population in the Russian-occupied territories would not object to being part of Russia. Do you know why that is? I'll tell you why. Because most of the people in those regions who are already occupied by the Russians are ethnic Russians. Of course they would not object. The ones who were Ukrainians and the ones who were very politically close to Ukraine, they fled a long while ago. 100%. They're not there anymore. The people who stood behind, the overwhelming majority of them, would be the ethnic Russians. And of course they wouldn't object to that. Why would they? As far as they're concerned, they've been liberated. Oh boy, oh boy. If the deal and the idea is simply to give our territories, then it is very primitive, President Volodymyr Zelensky said in response. Well, I have news for Mr. Zelensky. War itself is primitive. The idea of war, the process of the war, it is primitive. So it doesn't matter if it's 2024 or if it's 1024. No matter how much we've evolved, once we get down into the mud, into the war, everything becomes primitive because the rules never change. Dog eats dog. That's how it is. If you want the war to end, you have two options. You either defeat your enemy on the battlefield using military force, or you get down to the negotiating table and you negotiate. Now you might do that willingly and happily, or you'll have to coerce your opponent into coming to the negotiating table. And that's exactly what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to strangle Russia, to put I was about to say 6. I think it's 26,000 sanctions. That's what we've been trying to do, to put pressure on their economy, to force them to come to the negotiating table and accept our terms. Fair enough. We've given our best. We lost, clearly. They're doing very well. Their GDP is the highest in Europe. It's growing fast. Ours is sinking into the toilet. Inflation is high. But we've tried it, and it didn't work. And what do we do now? Well, it seems to me we double down on stupid, on the same idea, and we try to up the ante in saying, well, now we should allow the Ukrainians to hit Russian territory with our weapons. I've talked about this in yesterday's video. Even if we was to do that, the outcome of the war would not change. It is very, very difficult for the Ukrainians to turn this war around, no matter what they do. But anyway, guys, it's been a pleasure. And if you like this video, if you think you've gotten any value from it, please hit the like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.